informative discussion. Please take your seats as the session is about to begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're in school again. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. But in all seriousness, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And I'm Congressman Hank Johnson, representing Georgia's 4th Congressional District. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this meaningful discussion on artistic freedom and the First Amendment. First, let me acknowledge the incredible organizations we have represented here today, as well as the artists and emerging artists whose lived experiences inform and guide the work that we do. Your advocacy ensures this issue resonates not only here in Washington, but in communities across the country. And I'm especially grateful to my friend and colleague, Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove of California, who, although unable to be here today due to conflicting schedules, has been right here with me as we have fought this fight. She is my co-lead on the RAP Act legislation, the Restoring Artistic Protections Act. This bill aims to safeguard artists' First Amendment rights by establishing clear and reasonable limits on the use of creative expression in criminal and civil proceedings. Too often we've seen prosecutors weaponize lyrics, scripts, or performances as though they were confessions, all while ignoring the fact that art is a form of imagination, storytelling, and creativity, not as evidence of guilt. And so today's panel is about unpacking that problem, hearing directly from artists, advocates, and experts, and exploring how we can strengthen protections moving forward. This is bigger than music alone. It touches all forms of creative expression: visual, art, literature, and performance. We've seen that it disproportionately impacts artists of color, whose voices are already over-policed and over-scrutinized. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is definitely going to get worse as we proceed into this climate of oppression, fear, and abuse of authority by a president who is looking to be the king. He's not looking to leave office, he's looking to be king, and he's establishing that kingdom right now as we speak with each move that he makes. And what is so terrorizing about it is that he is aided and abetted by a rubber stamp Congress and a rubber stamp MAGA 6-3 majority on the United States Supreme Court. And so, you know, who do we have to turn to when all 3 branches of government have been corrupted into a march towards authoritarianism? Well, you know, it's going to be up to we the people and the representatives of those people, such as myself. And so y'all, the people, are the wind beneath our wings. And we need you now more than ever. We'll stand up, but we also need you to stand up. And so this RAP Act is legislation that stands up to protect artists who are under attack. And guess who the only ones are who are under attack? The only artists under attack for their creative content. It's those who produce and perform and write the most popular music genre, the most profitable music genre in the culture, and it's rap artists, rap music. So we know that when artists are free to create without fear of retaliation, it fuels innovation, cultural vitality, and justice itself. But when courts allow artistic expression to be misinterpreted and misused, we undermine both free speech and the fairness of our judicial system. So I look forward to a robust discussion together. Let's shine a light on this issue, hear from those closest to it, and build the momentum needed to protect creativity and freedom of expression in America. With that, I'm honored to introduce our moderator for the day, Dr. Rashad Ritchie, my good friend. Dr. Ritchie serves as the president of Rolling Out magazine, and in 2022, he was inducted into the prestigious National Black Radio Hall of Fame, making him the youngest recipient to date. Dr. Ritchie serves as the daily television news anchor for Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, a nationally syndicated TV show. Through his multifaceted career spanning broadcasting, academia, physics, legal practice, and humanitarian service, Dr. Ritchie has demonstrated that excellence knows no boundaries when driven by purpose, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to truth and human advancement. His legacy continues to inspire future generations of scholars, broadcasters, and advocates who seek to make a meaningful impact on the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Rashad Ritchie.
How does everybody feel? Y'all can sound just a little bit better than that. How does everybody feel? Feeling is what you make it, amen? I'm going to bring up this distinguished panel, but before I do, I want us all to pause a moment to give a collective round of applause to both the congressman and his wife, Marita. Let's do that for their continued leadership, and to the staff who continues to be advocates for our higher selves. We're in a different phase. I call this the plasma phase. How many of y'all heard of plasma? It's the fourth state of matter. It's your in-between state. And we feel as if we're in an in-between state. We will talk about the legalities of utilizing imagination in order to create criminal prosecutions. But isn't it interesting? You know, rappers, many of them don't even write their own lyrics. They have collaborators. Do they produce the content? Do they own the distribution channels? Did they even make the beat? So how is it that they are the artistic expression, the only artistic expression, when it took at least 7 painters to paint the canvas? Y'all with me? Introducing to the stage, we have Lucius Outlaw III, professor, Howard University School of Law. Let's bring him to the stage. Round of applause. Thank you, brother. Next, we have Dr. Lakita Bennett, chair and professor, Department of Political Science, Howard University. Next, we have Willie Prophet Stiggers, co-founder and co-chair, Black Music Action Coalition. Last but not least, Dr. Chelsea Green, chair of the Board of Trustees, Recording Academy. All right, I'm going to move this chair just a little bit like at Grandma's house. Okay, because I want to have a conversation with you. And let me first start with an obvious question, Professor Outlaw. All right, so you teach a class that literally deals with how rap lyrics are used in prosecutions. And that lens is interesting. When I was in law school, we had no such class, brother. But we have one today. What's the academic lens? And what's the practical lens of that reality?
Well, thank you, and thank you, Congressman, for having me. And doing the Rap Act is very important. We need to support it. So I run a clinic where law students represent indigent clients charged with misdemeanors. And we wanted to look about doing something more systematic, having something a larger impact. And what we found is, I love hip hop, my students love hip hop. We might disagree about what's the best age of hip hop, but we all love hip hop. And we saw over and over again these cases with the students kept bringing up, especially the Young Thug case, about how is this possible? How can they use this? And we started having conversations about it and said, let's do something about it. And we organized a campaign called Culture Not Evidence. That's really about addressing and confronting this growing trend of prosecutors using lyrics. And it's been going on for decades. Some of us might remember everybody's favorite uncle now, Snoop. And people forget, he's everybody's favorite, white, black, everybody. Right. But in the mid-1990s, the government tried to put him in prison for murder. And one of the things they used as evidence was, murder was the case they gave me. And they played it. So this has been going on forever. My brother, Eric Nielsen, University of Richmond, he's been documenting the cases. And his count right now is over 800 cases where rap lyrics have been used as evidence to convict people. And so this legal lens is really looking at how is this possible against the First Amendment, against the other laws, why this is not being used against other musical genres, other artists. I think of Alec Baldwin, he was on trial for a manslaughter. Nobody suggested we're gonna play clips of movies every time he's holding a gun or shooting a gun, because the law understands and judges and courts can separate the art from the artist when it's those types of art. But they don't do it when it comes to hip hop, when it comes to rap. And so that's kind of where we're looking at it. It's like, why doesn't the legal system give the same appreciation to rap and hip hop culture that it does to other music and other art forms?
Follow up, it sounds like a lazy prosecution. When they don't get the evidence required, but they utilize these tropes. What is the qualifier? How do they qualify?
It's very interesting because you're absolutely right. It is lazy. And what I say, it's a shortcut to conviction. And it's a shortcut that's paved in bias, right? It allows the prosecutor to play a song and they know how juries are going to react to it, especially juries who don't have an appreciation for hip hop, who don't have an understanding of hip hop, and they're going to hear music and they're just going to say, the prosecutors are basically banking that this music is going to offend you. This music is going to scare you. And when you hear the scary music and offensive music, it's just a short hop, skip to, that person is dangerous. Right. That person needs to be locked away. That person is a criminal. So it is lazy, it's a shortcut. And what's really troubling is that how prosecutors get this evidence, this music as evidence, oftentimes is they have a police officer or FBI agent. And the FBI agent, they say, here's the lyrics. And the FBI agent goes, well, this line means this. This line means that. This line, and they're deemed an expert, even though they have no training in hip hop, have read no scholarship on hip hop, and most will admit they don't even like hip hop. But the courts will say they're an expert. And why they're an expert? Because the agent or the officer say, well, I've investigated crimes. I've investigated violent crime. And so I can interpret, I'm a translator of this language. And it's like, it's not the same. But that's how it gets into court.
Prophet, I'm coming to you. There's a lot of money made on black culture in the music industry, whole lot of money. And there was a time when artists did not talk a lot about that money part, the purist in the art. And now you see a shift happening where artists are being more vocal about how the art itself has been hijacked by certain executives rather than the artist being empowered. So as consumers of the art, what is our obligation, responsibility? What are we able to do to create more empowerment for the artists rather than the industry?
Peace, everybody. How y'all feeling? Thank you for the question. Thank you for having me, Congressman. Thank you for your efforts and your leadership around this issue. Black music has built global enterprises. Yeah. Black culture has always been the thing that has been extracted from us and used to build wealth for everyone except us. Our organization, Black Music Action Coalition, is going to be releasing a report this year where we are going to outline the amount of wealth robbed, stripped from Black America because of unfair copyrights, bad publishing deals, straight out theft. It's in the trillions of dollars. All the way from Sister Rosetta Tharpe all the way up to George Clinton. The stories are insurmountable. And this is an extension of the way Black America has been treated by this country. It's the extension of how Black folk all over the world has been treated by the world. We've always been used for our cultural abilities and not profit from it. But the issue today isn't just about what they're doing, it's about what we need to do. What we need to do as a people, what we need to do as an industry. We have to take back that power. We have to take back that control. We have to stop allowing folks to leverage us for their wealth. You have some of the grandchildren of some of the greatest artists to walk through the aisles of time living in poverty today, while other people are living, the life of luxury because of the robbing and the theft that took place in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, all the way up to present reality. There's something in this industry that started only in hip-hop called the 360 deal. There was a time when artists would say, I wasn't worried about the royalty or the publishing because I will make my money on the road. But then as hip-hop began to grow and amass the fortunes that it began to amass, record companies said, we need a piece of everything now. So now we need not only a piece of the royalty, the record sales, we also want a piece of your touring, we want a piece of your movies, we want a piece of the endorsement deals, and 9 out of 10 coming from an environment where you don't have the economic base to stand up. You're negotiating from an empty stomach. And so they come with these trinkets, and we take the bait. And we leverage and we sell our IP. And we have to get to a point now where we have to be smarter than that. I said this the other day. When crack came into the community in 1998 in New York, we hadn't experienced any drug like that before, right? Drugs had existed prior to that, but we hadn't seen any other drug that took the mother out the household. We hadn't seen any other drug that take someone working in the corporate job and in 2 weeks lose 200 pounds and out on the street selling their goods. We hadn't seen that before. There had been no examples of that before. We have seen examples time and time again of this cultural exploitation. There's no reason why in 2025 artists are still allowing this practice to take place. We have enough examples. We have enough of a blueprint now of what not to do. And we just have to get to the point where we're bold enough and courageous enough to say the hell with that system and create our own.
I'm going to we can give that a round of applause. I'm going to Dr. Burnett next, and you made an interesting point, a social point that hits a legal point. The 360 contracts will have some artists leaving without owning their own name.
Absolutely.
And in order to use their own name, they have to now give a fee, a royalty, yes, because it has to be licensed back to themselves. I know that sounds insane, but that's actually how it works. Yes. Which means they don't have artistic expression truly, which goes back to the heart of the question of art, because an actor doesn't have artistic expression fully either. So it's understood that the actor or the actress is actually expressing an art, but it's not creating confession. To Dr. Burnett, let's talk about imagination, because that's what they're actually restricting, is imagination. There was a time in hip-hop when almost every popular song had a political message. The theme, the scheme, the scenario, and the win was political in nature. And then that transformed into a non-political message, not necessarily inauthentic to that particular demographic or area, but not solutions-oriented. How do we transition back to at least a happy place, a medium, where we're sparking imagination again into what can be instead of what has been?
Thank you for that question. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Congressman, for having me as well and supporting the act. This is exactly what I talk about in my research. Primarily, thinking about going back to having more political rap is to do some of the things that artists have been doing today. I think having streaming, having the ability to release your own music, and we've seen a number of artists do this, like Chance the Rapper, Lupe Fiasco, and others who are going out and saying, you know, I don't want the record industry to control my art. I want to release my art, and I want to release the type of art that I have. Taking case Lupe Fiasco, he had people on the street protesting to give him the rights from his record company, the industry, to be able to record the type of music he wanted to record, and to not be restricted on what the industry was telling him to do. So I think now when we're thinking about the use of technology, it's going to be a benefit for artists to be able to present their music in their way. And we see this with all these different sites where artists are publishing their own music, where they're not going to the industry for their music, because we know that the industry is having control over what the artists present. When we think about political rap in the way that it was previously, you know, on the major radio stations, on the major television shows, music shows, you could see the political rap. Now, there is no diversity. Everything is the same. There's not really a diversity of thought when we're looking at some of these industries, but when we have different outlets like streaming, like Sirius, we can hear other thoughts. We can hear the diversity of music. And I also think there's a correlation between what's going on in society and a number of political raps that do exist and that come to the forefront. And so if we look at someone like Kendrick Lamar, for instance, you know, when he first started, he went without being on the record label. And he was able to talk, to have the lyrics that he wanted to have. When he did go on a record label, he did also ask and to be able to present the lyrics that he wanted to present. And we see that with his music. And now you see him winning a Pulitzer Prize for his music, where he's talking about solutions, where he's talking about politics. You're seeing his songs be anthems for movements, right? If you think about All Right by Kendrick Lamar. And so we do have political rap that exists. And what I think the young people know more than maybe some of us is how to find that music. They know where to go to get that music. If we are only listening to mainstream media and getting our music from there, then we don't see the diversity of thought, the diversity of music that does exist. So I think when we're thinking about artists and what they need to do is that they have to think about ways in which they can push back against the industry and to be able to write music that they want to write, to talk about topics that they want to talk about. I think oftentimes we think about hip hop, and when we talk about hip hop, we want to say that there was this golden era of hip hop where it's more political rap than it is now. And the argument I make is that artists are still creating political rap. And if you think about people like Lil Wayne, typically you wouldn't think of Lil Wayne as a conscious artist. He's not a political rapper. But he made songs about what happened to his hometown after Hurricane Katrina, right? And so we think about artists, and we need to think about the music that they present and look at the diversity on their albums other than putting them in a box of who's political and what's not political.
Well said. Dr. Green, I'm going to ask you a very big question that incorporates contemporary and also some of the non-contemporary spaces. So let's say there's an artist who works across those lines, okay? I can think of T.I., who's definitely an industry guy, but he has his nuances, where he has definitely said some things that, excuse my language, pissed off the industry and the politics of now. How do you see black music's influence in traditionally white-owned media spaces? Just because they're urban does not mean they're not white-owned, okay? So how do you see the expression of that happening? Is it something that we eventually take over, or will there come a conflict with that model?
I think that that's a very loaded question. And there's a lot of pieces to that. It's an honor to be here, and thank you to the Congressman and my colleagues at the Academy for the invitation to be a part. I have to speak from my own experience. I am a violinist who grew up as the only or one of a clear minority playing in orchestras my whole life. I pursued 3 degrees on a classical instrument of viola, and I will never forget the day that the entire string department and the Dean of Graduate Studies set me down in the office. They had just seen a feature on me and my band that plays contemporary jazz and R&B music happen on DC Fox station that weekend, because we were promoting a show. And they set me down on Monday and said, "We didn't give you a scholarship to our institution to be out in the world doing that. So either you show up to what we have asked you to do here, or you forfeit your scholarship."
Wow.
And I said, "Thankfully you don't have to forfeit, because y'all can have it." I had to, in that moment, decide whether I wanted to pursue the music that fed me artistically and expressed what I wanted to say, right? Versus kowtowing to an institutional system that wanted me to be performative for them for a DE&I structure. And so I think that, and I had said, "God, if this is your alignment for me, you will allow it for that me to finish this degree paying cash, no loans." That's right. And pursue my career as an artist. And I never had a loan for that degree ever. And I'm so grateful that the same symphonies they were wanting me to audition for now call me to play my original music with my band in front of the symphony. So when you talk about how black music has influenced white spaces, you see the movement of national symphony orchestras bringing very prominent black artists to perform their music in front of the symphony. These concerts are saving their season. These are sold out, multiple night concerts where we are in the place, on our feet, excited, right? And we see these happening all over the world. So it's undeniable. And I think the conversation we're really having here today is courage and fear. It is not an easy choice to say, however I'm presenting, that's authentically me. What I want to say, how I want to say it, the notes I choose to play. Because it's not even just about lyrics. It's even about the chord progressions that you use, right? This is getting people off of certain radio formats. So you mentioned one, Prophet, about Sister Rosetta Tharpe. When we think about Big Mama Thornton, Chuck Berry, Lil Richard, Florence Price, these are voices that were systemic, like they were erased with intention in a certain way. And if it were not for our community, the way that we supported that, we would not even know those names today.
Right. That's right. Right.
This is where we still are right now. I can tell you 1,000%, if it were not for the fans that support me and my music directly, I would not be out here just on tours and doing things. So when you're talking about using media, social media, and how that's influencing just the world, you have to be intentional about your messaging, how you're presenting, and we must be consistent, right? I think it's also consistency that allows the message to pass through the generation. So I think that we're dealing with genre policing, which is what we see literal policing happening in a different way with intention now too. So if we understand that our presence is police, we have to understand that our words are too.
That is so prolific. So prolific. You are the shining example of being true to thyself. Being true to thyself. Authenticity. There's something, and this is me, I just fundamentally believe that the cosmos gave you some gifts. And if you are authentically true to those gifts, you authentically are true to those gifts, that the gift makes room for the gift. The gift makes room for the giver. We are sometimes afraid that the gift is inadequate, and we sign agreements that would violate rather than validate that gifting. Kendrick Lamar, as you brought up, this is another shining example of authenticity, making and creating a pathway. We're going to talk about the RAP Act. And Professor, I'm coming back to you. So the RAP Act was introduced to prevent prosecutors from utilizing those same lyrics, those same expressions as evidence in a criminal trial. So as artists, advocates, and professors, why should this be so important to everybody else, even if they don't give a damn about hip hop? Why should this be important to them?
Well, it's really about criminalization of expression. And we can see it already on the horizons, with Jimmy Kimmel, right? When one man decides, I'm get to decide what is acceptable speech and what is not acceptable speech, and will use every lever of government to enforce that. We're living in a problem state. And so to be clear, people have to understand what the RAP Act and similar laws try to do. It's not saying prosecutors can never use rap lyrics as evidence. It's not saying that, right? If you go out and commit a crime, you go and rob the 7-Eleven and shoot somebody, and then you go home and record, I went down the block, shot, blah, 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 and you give a narrative of what you just did, nobody's saying that shouldn't be evidence. But that's not what is happening on the majority of cases. What they're doing is trying to say, well, this case is a drug case. You rapped about drugs. So it has to be relevant, it has to be probative, it has to be influential, even if there's no direct factual ties between the rap and what you're accused of. Oh, you rap about violence, this is a violent offense, even though there's no similarities between the narrative you say in your rap and the facts of this case, but just because it's violence, we're gonna let it in. Because again, it's appealing to bias, it's appealing to fear, it's appealing to anti-black sentiment. That's what it's for. And so we all need to be concerned about this because, one day's target, you could be the target next. Once they get rid of hip hop, who are they going to come after next? Yeah. And this is what we also have to understand, this is not new. Prior to the Civil War, in South Carolina, there was a slave rebellion, the Stono Rebellion. And some slaves got tired and they ran up on the armory and they caused some trouble. And after they were put down, the legislature, and they passed some quick laws. And one of the major laws they passed was it's illegal for a slave to have a drum, a sword, a wooden sword. And what they realized is that they equated the drum with weapons. Because they understood for black people, music is an organizing tool. Music is a communication tool. Music is a tool of rebellion, of organizing, of communicating our struggles and our passions and what we need from this country. And so that's the same thing that's happening with hip hop. But at the same time, the companies, as my guests, my fellow colleagues say, will profit handsomely. So while a rapper is on trial, like Young said, all the streams go up. And so the company makes money. And one of the things that we're pushing is that companies need to, the record labels and the companies need to have more skin in the game, right? And one of the things we're proposing is if you're a rap artist, you should insist that when the royalties on your music are split, the record company, a piece of their royalties has to go into an escrow account. And that says, if you get prosecuted and the government wants to use your lyrics, that money becomes yours to defend yourself. And if it never happens, it goes to the record company. Because the record companies have no insurance and they need to have skin in the game because what happens? What is the market? What sells in America? Sex and violence. And so if you're a young rapper today, if you want to do positive rap or message rap, the record companies are going to say, we can't sell that. Put in some B words, some H words, some shoot 'em up, some crack, put in some drugs and violence. We can sell that. So the market is pushing our youth to go and put out violent, sexual music, putting them at risk while they reap the profits, and then when the prosecution comes, they're nowhere to be found.
You know, that's so interesting, man, because that'll probably change the industry overnight. I'm coming to you. That'll probably change the industry overnight if they did that. And even when you listen to country music, all right, to our brothers and sisters on the countryside, turn it on. It's a little violence at the house. They'll talk about it. They got some drug use going on. They'll talk about it. And they may have had a bar fight or two, and it didn't end up well for the other guy. They'll talk about it. But you would never imagine that if they get arrested for domestic violence, that the lyrics they used in their country music song would ever be used against them in a court of law. Unheard of. But that is becoming the norm in hip hop. Go ahead, dear brother.
No, listen. One thing we have to do is be very clear about something. This is not about, yes, this is a freedom of speech issue. And the reality of this is about the criminalization of black people. This is another opportunity for them to advance the prison industrial complex. This is what this is about. That's why you don't see it in other genres. That's why you don't see it happening in film, in television, in literary form. You don't see that. That's also why you've seen Jimmy Kimmel, you've seen white folks uproar behind that, and he's back on television, right? That's the difference between what we're dealing with and what they're dealing with at the end of the day. This is not, we can say everyone needs to be concerned about it, and we will hope humanity show up in that way, but we need to be very concerned about it. I remember coming to the CBC 20, 30 years ago when rap music was not even something they wanted to discuss. They was trying to ban it. And now your sons and your daughters are being prosecuted for this as an extension of this prison industry, this onslaught to destroy black folks in this country. That's what we're dealing with. So it doesn't matter if you like rap, doesn't matter if you listen to it, doesn't matter if you agree with it. This is no different than the crack proliferation, the guns coming to our neighborhood, the lack of education, the lack of health care. It's the extension of the same ideals. That's it. And the reason why this is so dangerous is because when you talk about lyrics and you talk about these people who have no clue about what's going on in hip-hop, no clue. Biggie came out with a song, in one of his songs, he has a lyric that says, "There's rings and things I sing about, bring them out. It's hard to yell when the barrel's in your mouth." A few years later, Jay-Z says, "I say a big verse, I'm only big enough my brother, I'm big enough to do it, I'm mad thorough, plus I know my own flow is foolish, so them rings and things you sing about, bring them out. Hard to yell when the barrel's in your mouth." A few years after that, Swiss Beats takes that song and make a hook for T.I., become one of his biggest songs, bring him out, it's hard to get. So who had the barrel in the mouth? Was it T.I.? Was it Biggie? Was it Jay-Z? Was it Swiss Beats? Who had it? Who had the gun in the mouth? That's why this is so dangerous. And that's why when we came across the fact that at the time it was 600 cases of black men being prosecuted, we quickly realized what this was. This wasn't about music. This was another successful attempt to ensure that black men are criminalized. Bottom line.
You talked about everything's connected, right? So you may not get a Jimmy Kimmel situation if you didn't do Luke the way you did Luke back in the day. Luke was arrested at the concert. And I think we underplay what that brother did. That brother had to go before Congress, testify under oath. Yeah. And when he won his cases, everybody else won theirs. So prosecuting, arresting people for content was only an avenue to criminalize black folk.
That's right.
Because nobody else got that action. We're going to open it up for Q&A in a moment. What's my timing? I want to make sure the audience can get in on this.
Can I just jump in?
Yes.
Too? Because I want to just say that there's been a lot of powerful words, and I want to just go ahead and make it very clear. This is our power as black people. The gifting, right? So there's a talent, and yes, they can perform well and they can execute well and they're on stage, but the gifting is the organizational message, is the influence that they have to bring people together, to inspire people, to encourage people, to make people think, to make people act differently, to make people dress differently, to make people want to present differently, to make people want to pursue things that they're talking about in their music. That's what the Rap Act is trying to protect. That's what we're trying to protect and really emphasize as to, even if you are doing reports or writing papers or doing whatever, you are the Rap Act. That is your gifting because of how you are engaging audiences. I tell my students all the time that anytime you meet a new person, you're on stage. That's a new time to perform and present who you are, even if you have your instrument in your hand or not. There's a message that you are artistically expressing, and that is where your gift resides.
And I would also like to add that when we are thinking about how these lyrics are being used as evidence against artists, what we see and what we talk about the most are some of those widely known cases, those televised cases. But what Nielsen and Dennis were able to show in their book is that these lyrics are being used from artists who don't even have a deal. These lyrics are being used from artists who are up and coming. You know, they go back and get their notebook where they wrote lyrics and use that as evidence. And then they use it out of context to try to make a point. And so we need to think about all of these hundreds of cases. We heard about Young Thug, we saw that case, but there's so many more cases of up and coming artists that are being utilized.
And also, and just for context, the Rap Act was established before Young Thug was arrested. Right. It was on the heels of those 500, 600 cases, and we have our brother Jamal Bowman in the building right here. Make some noise for Jamal, former Congressman Jamal Bowman from the Bronx. He and Brother Hank Johnson introduced the Rap Act, and this was way before, well, almost a year before they got arrested. And the cases are happening at the state level. So we have the federal bill, which was so key because it created the conversation, it created the energy, it started to open people's eyes up to what was happening, and then that triggered the state bills because these cases were happening at the state level. So California passed a bill, Louisiana passed a bill, there's a great bill moving here in Maryland with Delegate Ampry. We have a bill in New York, a bill in Georgia. We have a bill out of Missouri. And this is why this is key. And I hope that everyone leave here with a commitment to lock in and put pressure on your lawmakers to ensure that we get these bills passed on the state level as well as what we're doing on the federal level. But to your point, sis, we established that RAP Act way before those cases, those national cases were in front of us.
And I also want to give a little message of hope, too, because this is not new for hip-hop. This is not new for rap. It's been attacked since the day it was born. First, it was an attack by market suppression. Radios wouldn't play it. MTV wouldn't play the videos. Record labels weren't trying to produce the music, distribute the music, but hip-hop found a way. People sold tapes out of the back of their truck, and it found a way. And then when that didn't work, then came the regulatory suppression. We're going to put warning labels on everything to try to scare people away. What they found is that just made it even more popular. That didn't work. And then when that didn't work, they tried to do legal suppression. You bring up Luke. They declared his music obscene. Didn't meet any real legal definition. It was just the judge says, I think it's obscene. And if you distribute that record in your record store, we're going to arrest you and take all your inventory. And Luke took that all the way to the Supreme Court and won. So that didn't work. And so then when it became popular and when the music really got to the white suburbs, then the corporate said, oh, we can make a bunch of money off of this. Then it became about controlling hip-hop and controlling it for their use and their benefit and not ours. So it was trying to not kill it, but control it and use it. So this is just the next wave of saying, well, we can't suppress it. People love it too much. We can't really regulate it because people are it's going to get out through streaming, taste, whatever. So now we're just going to weaponize it against you. We're going to take what you have grown into a global phenomenon and make it a weapon to imprison you. But hip hop will survive because it'll find a way, and the RAP Act is one of the ways that we're going to get through this.
And because of people like the panel on the stage and members of Congress, just like that wave of adversity came and we overcame that, we'll overcome this one. Can we give them a round of applause? I want to make sure that we do some Q&A with the audience participation. I know folk got questions. So who do we have to help coordinate this from the audience? All right. So to my understanding, okay, do you want them to raise their hands or just create a line? Raise your hand. Okay. And is there a microphone? There's a mic. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everyone. I have a question for Professor Outlaw. He's not surprised. So the question is, how important is it for black men in the legal field to be a part of this movement in particular, since black men are disproportionately affected by this?
Oh, it's very important. But I mean, I think we need black people, period, involved. Because let's be clear, it's yes, we hear many of the stories it's against black men, but there's black women being hit with this too. And not only, even when it's a black man that's being targeted, often the collateral consequences are burdened a lot by the women involved in the legal system at many levels. And so this is a fight for all of us because, again, hip-hop is the music of our rebellion. Is how we express to the world what is going on in our communities and the problems in our communities and the racism of this world and in this country. And is our language telling to the world what's going on? And that's why, in many ways, they hate it. Because it's telling a truth that they don't want to hear. So we need everybody to be involved in some way in the criminal legal system because it is affecting all of us in some way.
Henry Taylor. Holding on to memorable experiences. And I'd like to ask, are there any negative effects of any type of music in a collective decision? Any negative effects of any type of music?
And this is open for the panel.
Yeah.
Are you talking about medically or
No,
in
no.
which?
In any way, in other words, does music influence behavior, in, negative or bad behavior, in your opinions? And the reason I'm asking, if so, do we need controls? I mean, you know, anything has limits in general. So the question is, you know, I'm all for freedom of speech, but the question is, do we feel musicians have the right to say anything they want?
I think there's two trains of thought here. One, we can have a conversation about content. We can have a conversation about what that individual life experiences are that motivates them to speak about the things that they speak about. But then the other part of it is, should people go to prison for it? And see, that's the part that we have to lock in on, because that's what this Rap Act is about. It's about, should people go to jail for what they said? Not whether or not we agree with what they're saying, not whether or not that song, you know, motivates you to go do something negative. And we can discuss all of that. And we can also discuss the environment in which a lot of these artists come from, in which the conditions produce these kind of ideas and perspectives. But the question is, should you go to prison for it?
Yeah.
And my answer is no.
And I want to jump on that, dear brother, because I understand your question. So fundamentally, all expression influences expression, no matter what. Did the Christian Bible influence the holy wars? You got me on that, right? So in the context of individuals who were already biased to war, yes, it could be utilized in that way. My point is, freedom of expression is something very sacred, because it goes at the core of who you are. And I don't want to take that away. I want to fight for it. I want to fight to make sure you can always have that. But let's talk about it in the context of rap just for a moment. Most of the lyrics are about what's happening in the hood. I'm from a place called Glenwood Road. I was a foster kid raised in that environment. I went in and out of juvenile. So if I had to write a rap song, I would rap about Glenwood. I don't know about anything else. So if I want to correct that paradigm, there you go, I need to correct Glenwood.
That's right.
And if I correct Glenwood, instead of rapping about cocaine and crack,
yeah,
I'll rap about parties,
that's right,
and banquets. Y'all got me. So I understand your question, dear brother. And I just wanted to put, did that answer it? Thank you, dear brother.
And I think the other part to that, in addressing your question, I would say yes. Artists have, and people have the freedom. That's what it says. It doesn't say, you know, it's not a freedom of a speech unless it doesn't harm anybody. There's no qualifiers on it. So there's songs out there I find totally offensive and have no value, but I will fight to defend that artist's right to put it out. Because one of the key questions embedded in your question is, who gets to decide?
Who's the decider?
Who gets to decide where the line is about how much harm is okay to express to be an artist and how much harm is not okay? Who gets to decide where that line is? And as we see in the history of this country, it's not us who gets to decide where that line is. Somebody makes it for us and then tries to impose it on us. Right. So when you say, well, yeah, there's going to be music, and also it's about, you have freedom of expression, how society reacts to it.
Yeah.
That's another question. So there's other ways and means of influencing the message that comes from our artists, rather than try to criminalize them, as my brother says, and put them in prison. My answer is yes, because I don't know who's going to get to decide.
And I'm happy you asked that question, because that is the issue that we have faced when we first presented this bill, is because folks then started to have opinions about rap music and missed the point that this is not about rap music. It's about criminalization of creativity, whether you agree or disagree. There's pictures and paintings that I don't agree with, you know? There was a picture, something went online, a banana peel was up on the wall, and it sold for like $30 million or something crazy. I thought that was the craziest thing I ever seen in my life, but to someone, that was art. So I'm happy you asked the question, but we have to lock into the fact that our people cannot continue to be criminalized and then convicted on the heels of their lyrics, straight up.
Hi, I have a question in regards to artists with their masters and just having free agency over their music. So as you know, like Prince, Michael Jackson, Macy Gray, R. Kelly, and a few others have stood up for their rights to have free agency and control over their own music. And things have happened to them, whether they've been criminalized or unalived in some type of way. My question is, what do we do as a community to help support them in their journey to regaining their rights as an artist? How do we stand behind that collectively and build power to more sustainable change, that artists have a right to own their music and not be unalived, and own their masters and not be criminalized?
I mean, I'm happy to start. We, at the Academy, we're very excited about our Black Music Collective, and a big part of what we do with the BMC is education. I think that really is the core of how artists, young artists especially, are approaching deal conversations. They're met with the opportunity, they see a lot of dollar signs, and don't really understand the implications of what will happen when they turn 60 or when they turn 70, right? So trying to educate our community is step one, but also educating the people that are around you, so that they can also help support the movement that you're trying to make with your art. I think we are so always focused on the artist, but a lot of how the artist thrives is based on the soil in which they are planted. Where are they? So is there a soil problem or is it an artist problem? And I think that the more education we can do, as I mentioned with the Academy, we're excited to do that across the world now with different groups, but also it's conversations like this, where if you all are, you know, having lunch and you see somebody that's pursuing their music or whatever, you can ask them, do you have music available on streaming? If you do, are you a member of ASCAP or BMI? Do you know where your royalties are going? Do you know how that's being calculated? What do your streams look like? Who's collecting that? Where is it going? How did you distribute that music? Where are you going online to maintain that? Do you have a back end to your website that's collecting who's looking at your site? I think there's a lot of background data that we can really thrive in, which is where they see the money opportunities, where we could see more of that ourselves.
In addition to that, the entire record business has to be revamped. Let's be clear. This is the only industry in which you have to give up your IP in order to do business. It is because the music industry look at artists as products instead of partners. So it has to be a revamping of the entire system. We have to get updated copyright laws to try and mitigate some of this. And also, we buried the word master, sis. Sound recordings. We have an industry-wide where we kill that, because there's also, we understood what the implications of that were with the masters and the slave. Literally, the master and then the slave was terms within music contracts. And we fought very hard to get those removed from many and most of the recording contracts that's out there right now. But this whole system has to be revamped, and people have to begin to look at, the industry have to begin to look at artists as partners, which is why streaming, although we are fighting for higher rates, and there's a whole system with that we can have a discussion about, but the freedom of that, what that did was allow artists to distribute music directly to consumer without the major label system in place. And the reason, terrestrial radio is on its way out, right? Everyone on their phone got their own playlist that they listening to when they go in their car, when they go on the plane. No one's even listening to radio any longer. So that's going to be obsolete at some point. So the streaming, we have to fight to get those rates right so we can actually profit from the streams in a real way, the way the major labels do. But that's the answer to it. Is this new idea of how we approach the music business in general. That's how we get to that point of what Prince and Michael and those artists before us and currently are fighting for, were fighting for, and are fighting for.
And I think another way to add to that, and a part of educating, is to use our voices in ways that we can protest, we sign petitions, we participate in those ways. Because I'm remembering I think it was about a year ago, I think it was Capitol Records. They wanted to put forth an AI rapper. His name was FN Mecca. Yes. And that AI rapper was using someone else's voice. Lyrics were being written for them. And the people protested against that. So just as soon, similar to what Jimmy Kimmel, like a day later, they removed FN Mecca and said they was not going to use this AI rapper. And so we know that utilizing our voices also has an impact. We need to be aware of what the industry is doing, and we need to educate others on what the industry is doing.
And that rapper was depicting police brutality in that video, which is where the outrage came. And we, as an organization, came straight at Capitol Records and sat down with Michelle Jubileer, who was the chairwoman at the time, and, we wasn't going for it, straight up and down.
AI is a whole part two of this conversation. 3 and 4. Yeah.
We got time for one more question. We're flat out of time. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. So I'm Dr. Celia McIntosh, a nurse practitioner, and listening to this conversation about criminalization of creativity reminds me of what's happening in the medicine field, where you have Black women dying at 3 to 4 times higher rates than white women. And this is just seemingly like a blueprint. So, and when we think about the criminalization and the mass incarceration, I'm thinking that that's mostly them trying to obviously control and really get back, because that's kind of like legalized slavery. So I'm sitting here very overwhelmed, even though I'm an activist doing the work. What are some self-care strategies?
You are on my street, okay? So I just wanted to say this, because when the brother asked the question about does it need to be controlled, the first thing I thought about was when we at the grocery store and we're going down the chip aisle, do I need to go protest against Lay's because they got a family size of sour cream and onion chips that I know I want instead of the 25-cent bag that I should have, right? Because it seems elementary, but also that means there's a diabetes association, there's a heart problem issue, there's a sodium issue, right? I'm not taking care of myself, right? So I think for us, even when we're thinking about what the RAP Act represents, this is self-care, right? This in and of itself is a way that we can protect our artistic ideas, our heart, our experience, in that we're able to find our artistic freedom through what we say and how we present it. So we have to do our part to help make that able to happen for generations to come, right? And the way that we do that is by building the community around it to support it, which is why we're saying the more we support and put our money there, they know how powerful our dollars are. So when we show up in mass number, when we have our dollars and support behind it, this is how we can take care of each other and ourselves.
On that, let's give our panel a round of applause. Thank you all for the great information. And none other than Congressman Hank Johnson to close us out.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our panelist and our moderator a hand of applause. Was this a valuable exercise for you? All right. That's wonderful. Let us all leave from this panel discussion today invigorated with the fact that we are free to express ourselves, even if someone disagrees with it. And it should not be a situation where if you disagree with me, then you can ban me from speaking. That's what down to is our freedom. Our freedom is at stake in this country in a way that it has not been since post-Reconstruction. They're trying to take this country backwards and discriminating against us based on our creative content is a mechanism for them to do that. Let's not fall for the okey doke in terms of whether or not what we say is appropriate or not. Let's support the fact that however low we may consider someone to be and what they have said, they still have a right to say it. Charlie Kirk had a right to be as obnoxious as he was, and so do we. And so let's not get it twisted. Let's support that right. Let us leave here invigorated to go outside and protect the freedom that we all hold dear. So I want to thank you all for being with us today. And again, I want to thank this panelist and the moderator. And I wish everyone the best and be safe as you head out into what is really a world that is cruel, particularly for us, and has us at the top of the menu list. Let's not get it twisted. We're in a fight for our survival, and let's band together to fight this threat, and together we will overcome. Thank you.